Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the channel, we are taking a look at Heroes of Cerulea, a game created by Lucas Falk and published by Black Fisk Publishing. This is a pixelated dungeon crawl RPG. If you have ever wanted to play a game based on the Legend of Zelda on your table, this is the game for you. And let me tell you, I absolutely love this game. I have fallen in love with this game ever since opening it, ever since starting to read the book. I've had a smile on my face. When I think about it, it makes me smile. When I'm playing it, I'm smiling. Yeah, this is one of the best games I have played so far this year. The game is a pretty typical RPG in that it has a GM and multiple players. However, it also has really good solo rules in the Hero of Cerulea solo rule supplement. And I really do like the solo rules in this game. One of the things that it does is it makes your solo hero more powerful than a typical starting hero. You will start with a boost to your stats, you will start with the ability to carry more items, and you will start with more special items. Just a really cool thing to do for a solo hero. So in this game, you will be traveling around on an overland map, just like you are in Zelda, and you are trying to find the pieces of the Trinity or the Triforce. This game has a definitive ending, and that is something that I really do appreciate, especially for a solo game. You can just kind of play this like a board game. And I know that sometimes solo players have trouble knowing when to end a game. Well, this game has an ending. In this game, you will be traveling around the overland. You will be trying to find dungeons. You will enter a dungeon. You will solve the puzzles and beat the monsters of that dungeon, and then defeat the boss of that dungeon. And when you defeat a boss, you will get one piece of the Trinity, one piece of the Triforce, and you have to do that 3 times. You have to have 3 pieces of the Trinity in order to unlock the gate to the Cerulean Citadel. And then once you do that, you can go through the final dungeon and defeat the final boss, who is like Ganon. He is called the Shadow King. And once you do that, you have won the game. And that's it. That is super cool. Of course, if you wanted to play for longer, you could say that the Triforce was split up into 8 pieces or 7 pieces or 6. But I think keeping it limited to 3 makes this game completely playable. You have a goal. You have a limited goal. You can see the goal at the end of the tunnel. And for me, that kind of pushes me to want to play this to completion. So your overland map is split into different regions. We have Mount Oblivion, we have the Quill Village, we have the Cerulean Citadel and Cerulean Town, we have the Raider Desert here, we have the Wyvern Mire, we have the Paragon Lake, the Frost Peaks, and the Gloom Wood. When you are playing a solo game, your solo character will start in his or her hut, and that hut is in the Gloom Wood. And there are a few different ways to play and a few different ways to approach the game. You can go from one dungeon to the next. You can do a random overland crawl where the dungeons are hidden, or you can have a map where you can select where the dungeons are and you know exactly where to go. It also handles that well in solo play by simulating the inhabitants, the NPCs. They might be able to give you clues or rumors about where the dungeons are so you know where to find them. Just really cool. So this game uses D4s only. And D4s are pretty much my least favorite kind of die just because they're so boring to roll. They just kind of plop. But it uses those thematically to represent the Triforce or the Trinity, the shape, the pyramid shape. And so everything is done with D4s, and it is a pretty typical kind of dice pool system. So a character here you will have your hero's name, the player, their kin, their ancestry. There are about 5 or 6 different kin, and each one of those will have a special ability. And then you have 3 stats: might, bravery, and insight, basically strength, intelligence, and dexterity. And the stats here, those represent the dice in your dice pool. And so a solo character starts with 4-3-2 in any configuration. A normal character starts with 3-2-1 in any configuration. And if I was doing an attack with my sword, I would roll 4d4. and I would look at the highest total. So the highest would be a 3, the ones would be ignored, and then I would refer to a action outcome chart. Basically, a 1 or a 2 is a failure. Your character takes damage if the action was dangerous. A 3, you succeed, but you still take damage. A 4, you completely succeed without taking damage. And if you roll multiple 4s, you have great success. And so something really good happens. Normally, a character starts off with 4 inventory slots, but a solo character starts off with a full large pouch of 8 slots. Normally, a character starts off with 1 special item, but my character, a solo character, starts off with 2 special items. So my special items were a boomerang, and that stuns monsters, and I can use it to retrieve small items, and a magic cape. I can spend energy to become invulnerable for 1 round for 1 energy. Each character will start with 3 heart containers, and the game suggests that you outline those with a pen, and then you can cross them out as you use them, same as your energy. And you can eat snacks or meals to heal your hearts and to heal your energy. You also want to keep track of how many keys you have found, your Trinity fragments. As you find Trinity fragments, you will have more chances to mitigate bad dice rolls, and you will also keep track of your gems. And you can spend your gems, and I spent my gems at the beginning of the game on bombs and snacks. Bombs can be used to blow up walls or floors that have cracks in them. This game completely embraces video game logic. And whenever you need to interpret something, you need to think about old school video games and how those games handled their mechanisms. And I think that is really, really cool. On a turn, you have a few actions you can take. You can attack, you can defend, you can use an item, you can inspect, you can escape, talk, or other. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the book. The book is so lovely. It's such a well-made thing. I love this slip case here. The art is really cool. The pixelated art is great. And of course, it looks like our old NES cartridges of the original Legend of Zelda. And here we have our overland map. And we have a little bit of a story here, setting things up. We get into our basics. It just kind of goes over all of the things I just said in the introduction. We get into our rules, the actions that you can take, your action rolls, your action outcomes. Again, a 1 to a 2 is a failed action. A 3 is a success, but you still take damage. And a 4 is a complete success. Talks about combat rolls and advantage or disadvantage. Basically, you can add dice or remove dice from your dice pools. It talks about monsters here, how monsters are just kind of dumb monsters. They will just attack, and monsters disappear when they get killed. They fade off into fade out of existence, and they might leave some loot for you to find. The game is split up into rounds when you are in combat. And here we have all of our different heroes. I did want to read this one paragraph here, though. Video game logic. In this game, a key works in pretty much every lock, but it disappears when used. Characters heal through eating food, and they increase their maximum health through finding heart containers. For some reason, random pots contain money and bombs, and boomerangs can bring those items to you. Monsters are evil. NPCs only talk about one single thing. Dungeons are puzzles designed to be solved by the heroes. Heroes of Cerulea embraces these anti-realistic aspects in order to facilitate a peculiar video game-like role-playing experience. And yeah, I just really like that. You know, if you leave a screen and you come back, the monsters might repopulate and things like that. And as far as improving goes, you only improve your character. There's no XP. You only improve by finding new items, by finding heart containers and energy containers, and by finding those Trinity fragments when you defeat bosses. And so here we have all of our kin, all of our ancestors. You can do an elf, an avian, a geon, an aquarian, or a seedling, and each one of those will have a different special ability, possibly a way to boost or to subtract from your starting stats. And then your characters will start with 3 hearts, 3 energy, a small pouch, a weapon based off of their kin, and 1 special item, either a lantern, a bow, a boomerang, or a magic cape. There are a whole bunch of other special items that you can find while you are playing. Again, a normal character will start with the attributes of 3, 2, 1 in any configuration you choose. But if you're playing solo, you start with 4, 3, 2. So your solo characters are a little bit more powerful. And then you can also randomize your appearance by having different colored hair and different colored clothes. You start with 15 gems and you can buy some things from the store before the game starts. Now, the game has a lot of really good generators, and most of the generators are done by rolling D44. So you take 2D4, one is the ones, one is the tens. So we'll read the green first, 34. And so when the GM or when you are playing solo, you can create your dungeons. You can have different themes and different types of architecture. So we can have 33. This is a death or skull theme, and the architecture is 44, a ship. So this is a ghost ship. So you could have some kind of a cursed pirate ship. Maybe that would be a really good thing to put into the Paragon Lake area of the game. And then each room of the dungeon, so like Legend of Zelda, all of the dungeons are built in square rooms like that. Very easy to navigate, very easy to create your dungeons in this game. And each room is a self-contained challenge. And so when you're playing solo, you can easily roll up the challenge for each room by rolling, again, a D44. We'll read blue first. 21, a switch puzzle. Find a hidden button and press it. Hold a floor switch down to keep a door open. Pull a lever from a distance, and so on. So we have things like different brazier puzzles or hidden doors, a key in a chest, an elevation obstacle, a wall obstacle, liquid obstacle, a mini boss, or monsters. And the monsters, there are 54 different monsters in the game. And so we have a really comprehensive bestiary. And when you come across a monster, again, you will roll a D44. If you want to increase the difficulty, you can add 10 to that roll, and that will put you up into the upper, as the bestiary progresses, the monsters get more deadly. Or if you want an easier challenge, you can subtract 10 down to a 1. And so we have rats or skulls, bats, jellyfish, slimes, striders, goblins, chompers, skeletons, warlocks, centipedes, ghosts, zombies, and all the way up to centaurs, grabbers, and dinos. So as I said, as the monsters progress, they get more deadly. It's also possible to come across inhabitants in dungeons and in the overworld. And when you come across an inhabitant, basically an NPC, you will roll 4d4, I believe, and then you can take each one of those. So 2, we found an avian or an aquarian. 1, it was a child. 3, the appearance, androgynous. 4, the demeanor, they are helpful. And what do they focus on? 1, they focus on the weather. Okay, so they might talk to you about the weather. And that's all they focus on. Like in these old games, NPCs are focused. They are laser focused on one topic. And no matter how many times you talk to them, they will repeat that same sentence over and over again. When you're playing solo and you find inhabitants, you really want to try to get them to tell you about a rumor, because that is one of the ways that you can discover the location of a dungeon. When you come across bosses, each boss will have a different feature, it will have a different type, and it will have a weakness. So like the bosses in Legend of Zelda, you might have to toss a bomb in its mouth. You might have to wait for the boss to hurt itself. You might have to drop something on the boss. You might have to make it roll over. So you never really know what the weakness of the boss is going to be. And there are also these special items, and the special items are found in treasure chests in the dungeon. And it's good to think of how you destroy the boss by the special item that you found in that dungeon. So let's say that we were going through a dungeon and the special item we found was a 1/1, was a lantern. Okay, so the lantern creates a light. So maybe we have to blind the boss. And let's see what kind of boss we would be facing off against. Let's do a 13. They are mighty and strong. And the type, we'll do 44. It's a mighty and strong dragon. And so maybe this dragon lives in darkness, and we have to shine the light of our lantern on it 3 times in order to defeat it, or something like that. We can also roll up a random weakness, 31. play a sedentary song, or a sedentary, play a sedating song. Okay, so maybe then we would have to find an ocarina or something. The bosses also have a randomized move set where you have to come up with a special attack, a regular attack. They can displace themselves or the heroes, or maybe they go into a defensive stance. There are also mini bosses, and mini bosses are basically your regular enemies, but they have more health and maybe they have some kind of special attack. So just really cool. A really simple and straightforward way of randomizing bosses, randomizing mini bosses, and coming up with interesting ways to defeat them. We also have a few different charts of items. So we have our shop items. These are items that can be purchased in stores. When you find a shop, you will roll a d4 plus 1 to determine how many items are available. And then you can randomize which items are available. We have things like snacks and meals, bombs, energy potions, heart potions, pixies, vitality potions, and so on. Sometimes we might find a general item, and general items are a little stronger. We can find magic keys or magic flutes, large pouches, heroes' tunics, and so on. And when you find a general item in a store, you roll to see what it is. So 12. 12 is a bottle. You can hold a potion, a wasp, or a pixie. And then you multiply that by 10. That's how much it costs. So this would cost 120 gems. And then we have all of our special items that we can find in the dungeons. Things like lanterns, bows, grappling hooks, magic fans, control staff, a lens of truth, a lightning staff, ice staff, fire staff, and so on. When we kill monsters, when we smash pots, when we open treasure, we will roll on these loot tables. We have standard loot and we have chest loot. Again, all kind of video game logic here. In the overworld, as we explore, we can go from one terrain to the next, and we can discover features and obstacles. So you never really know what you're going to find. If we move on to the next screen, we might find a 13, a mysterious statue, and maybe that also has an obstacle of 11, and there is a mini boss. So maybe we have to destroy the mini boss in order to figure out what this mysterious statue does. We can find caves, which are like mini dungeons. Sometimes things will be protected by a guardian, and we might find an inhabitant to interact with, hoping to find those clues. And then the game comes with 3 complete dungeons, and it kind of tells you where to set this dungeon. So this woodland tomb here is set somewhere in the Gloom Wood, and it recommends this large tree here, or you can randomize it. And here we have a little bit of an explanation about the exterior and the interior of this woodland tomb. And here we have the map of the tomb here. And then this goes through all of the different keys for populating that dungeon for standard play. And it also comes with your final boss. And then we have the lake tower here. That's another pre-made dungeon. And we have our cavern of flame, which is a pre-made dungeon. And then finally, we have our last dungeon. So this is the Cerulean Citadel. So this will always be the final dungeon in a game. And this is a pretty large multi-floor dungeon that ends with the big boss fight against the Shadow Knight or the Shadow King. The Shadow King here. So there is the Shadow King that you will be fighting. And then at the end pages here, we have a rules summary and another rules summary. Just a beautifully produced book. I love it. I have enjoyed my time so much reading it. Now, this special edition comes with a slip sleeve there, and we also get a player booklet. And the player booklet just kind of is player focused. And so this is all of the rules that the player will need to know to play the game. And then we also have our solo rules. And I'm really happy with the solo rules. The solo rules kind of cover everything. Because it's called Hero of Cerulea and not Heroes, you will be playing as one hero. And like I've said already, the hero starts off a little bit stronger. So you start with a large pouch, you start with 2 special items, and you start with bonus attributes of a 4, 3, and a 2. And there are different ways that you can play the campaign. You can play a dungeon campaign where you start at the dungeon's entrance and you just do dungeons. You do 3 dungeons, get the Triforce, and then go on to your final dungeon. Or you can do a screen crawl campaign, and that's where you start on the map and you move from one area to the next, overcoming obstacles and looking for those dungeons. Again, it reinforces the idea of your video game logic and how to troubleshoot things. If things make no sense, re-roll. If you are only finding dead ends, make a secret entrance, make a secret exit. If there aren't enough keys, then make more keys. If you have leftover rooms that you haven't explored, go and explore those rooms and find better treasure. So it just kind of gives you some tips on how to progress when you come up against issues. And here we have our rules. Most of the rules are the same. You do everything the same according to the rules in the book. When you talk to inhabitants, you kind of have to figure out what the inhabitant is focused on, and then you will roll on one chart. And if you roll well, then that is the thing they are focused on. If not, they might recommend something different. So let's say we came across a inhabitant and it was a small child who was an elf. Maybe they were lost. And so we could say, is the inhabitant lost? Does the inhabitant need help getting home? Okay, and then we could roll our D4, and it's a 4. That was correct. Okay, so now we know that the inhabitant needs to get home. So that would be a little side quest. And then if we solve that, if we do what the inhabitant wants, they will give us a 2, a random chest loot. Or if we rolled a 1, they would give us a rumor or a secret. And we can apply that rumor to the overland, and that way we could know where one of the dungeons is. So we could just say, okay, so we helped that little elf child get back to Gloomwood, and one of the elders told us that the dungeon in Gloomwood was at H14. And so then we would know that we would go to that dungeon. Very simple, but very straightforward, and it does help propel the game. It helps push the game forward. And then we get into a really robust section on creating dungeons, and this is great. And so it just tells you how to apply all of the rules in this book for creating dungeons for solo play. And what's really cool is it introduces this thing called glitches. And when you start a dungeon, you will roll 2d4 and you will total those. So 4. So I would get 4 glitches. And glitches are things that I can spend to re-roll dice when creating the dungeon. So it gives you an opportunity to author the dungeon, but it still keeps an element of randomness. Really, really like that. It tells you how to keep track of all of the things you will find as you move from one room to the next. When you generate a room, you will generate the room type, the room size. They're either small or large, how many doors, how many openings it has, and the challenge. And so each room, again, will have a certain challenge. And so you will turn to your challenge table here. So as you enter certain rooms, you will have challenges, and then sometimes you will have special rooms, and each dungeon will have 4 special rooms. They might have a vertical opening where they go from one floor to the next. You might have an inhabitant room, a special item room, and the boss room. And again, when you find your special item and then when you create your boss, you want to think about how those things interact, because like in the Legend of Zelda, you would go into one dungeon and you would find the ice staff, and then that boss would be weak to that ice staff, or that ice staff would be used for puzzles in that particular dungeon. So it's really good to think about things in those terms. We have our room size, how many openings, what kind of challenge it is. If you come across pots, how many pots there are and what the pots have in them, because you want to destroy your pots to find bombs and to find gold and that kind of thing. Devising puzzles, and then how to handle your mini bosses and how to handle your boss fights. And then finally, we get a really brief section here on exploring the overworld, on discovering dungeons, and how to travel from one square to the next. It's dangerous to go alone, but sometimes you have no choice. Fate has chosen you to come to Cerulea's aid. But yeah, this game is really cool. It does so much with so little. And I love all of the different randomizing charts are really cool. They're not super robust. This isn't a game that you're going to play forever, but because it's a game with a definitive story, a definitive beginning, middle, and end, and a goal that you're working towards, just to get those 3 pieces of the Trinity of the Triforce and then go to your final dungeon and defeat the final boss. You could just set this up and play the entire game from beginning to middle to end in a single session, more like a board game. And I really do appreciate that Or you could play it more as a traditional RPG and have this kind of a map here and populate with different villages. I think one thing that I would like to see, and I think one complaint, one point of criticism, is the lack of a village generating system. I think a couple pages of charts on how to generate your inhabitant villages and your small kind of rural villages in the forest, or maybe up here in the mountains, and then your larger kind of towns. I think that would be really cool, and I would love to see a little expansion for that. Now, there are already a couple little pamphlet expansions about the size of the Hero of Cerulea expansion, and those have additional dungeons, because there's only 3 dungeons or 4 dungeons, including the last dungeon in the book. And so the other dungeons that might be populated in the other areas, those have been created. And if you're playing solo, you can still play through these, but maybe you might want to randomize the rooms as you are working through, just to keep things a little bit of a surprise, a little bit of just not knowing what's going on. Or you could just read these and use them as inspiration for when you are designing your own dungeons for solo play, just to see kind of how the game uses its video game logic and combines things together to create an interesting experience for the players, and then apply that information, that knowledge that you've learned to your solo hero games. But yeah, I cannot recommend this enough. It's available as a book. I know there's a normal version that just has the gray the gray cartridge look. You can also get this as a PDF on Drive through RPG. I believe it is available. That's where I've got the solo pamphlet here, and I've seen the other supplements. I think they're all available for people just to buy. I got links for being a Kickstarter backer, but if they're not available now, I'm sure they will be soon. So, all right, well, that was just a brief look at Heroes of Cerulea. This is a game that I love. This is a game that I do highly recommend, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be on my favorite games of the year list when I do that at the end of 2024, because it's just so dang charming. And I love the way that it embraces that video game logic and gives me that old school video game feel on my table. So, all right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.